For over 30 years, Situation Management Systems has trained the Positive Power and Influence program to people all over the world in an effort to empower themselves with the knowledge and tools they need to deal with difficult situations at work, at home, and everywhere in between. Our CEO and host, Sherri has been training people about positive power and influence all around the world for most of her professional career, and recently got her PhD in Human Development within the School of Leadership at Fielding University. Her co-host, Rhonda Selvale, has been with the company for more than 10 years now, and is not only a client services consultant, but a trainer of the program who has directed various learning initiatives for some of our most important clients.
Hi.
It's Sherri
And Rhonda.
And you had a suggestion about what you thought we should talk about today.
Yeah, I think it's important to talk about your actual solid ability to influence up.
Oh my.
Can you feel the clenching stomachs around the world? I think people really struggle with thinking they have the power to do this.
A lot of people believe they can't influence upwardly, and they're limited as to what influence styles they can use.
Yeah, and the research and the experience we've had certainly shows otherwise.
Well, my PhD that I completed last year, what I focused on was the relationship between leaders and followers. And there's been some interesting things that have come up around that, because it's looking at trust and respect and all of the implicit social elements and how they relate to that relationship. And I've also interviewed a bunch of people and talked to lots of people about it, and we get tons of people obviously going through the program and talking about it. But some of the toughest things that I've talked to people about, for example, is leaders have certain information that they can't share. They're not able to share it. It's, for whatever reason, within the organization, it's not information they can share. And so followers sometimes feel like their manager or their leader is hiding stuff from them.
Yeah, and well, what's interesting too is that I think it's often taken that one instance where something like that happened, and they can never let go of it.
Some people hold on to it,
for a long time. And you can use the trend of the town hall and information being known while that town hall was being said, and then in instances that have happened afterward, like layoffs or downsizing, etc., that have completely invalidated their trust. Yet they are given certain tasks that they have to complete, and if they need resources, they need to find a way to connect with their leader to get those resources.
Well, it's interesting because some of the leaders that I interviewed, what they said was, you got to have faith in me. There's things I can't tell you, but you've got to trust me. You've got to have faith in me. You've got to give me a break. And it's kind of interesting hearing that coming from a leader to a follower, to say, look, have faith. Some leaders definitely deserve that. Some leaders don't.
Yes.
It's not that it's unfounded that people wouldn't trust their leader, as you were just saying. There's a lot of situations where they've created a huge amount of distrust with people.
Yeah, but there's also situations where your leaders developed the trust. They've given you the opportunity to fail, and they've supported you even through your failures and your successes. So there really are two sides of that coin, and that, I think, have an understanding of, again, the situation as always, and what it is you need from that person and what's important to them. It's very critical in being able to influence upwardly.
Yeah, I think there's another thing that a lot of people talked about, and that's self-control. And when I'm talking about self-control, it's also the leader that is predictable. That's not going to come in the next day and lose it and start yelling at people, and then by lunchtime he's joking with people, and people are just confused as to the Jekyll and Hyde personality type of leader. So that creates a lot of distrust too, when you got the crazies out there who maybe had a fight in the morning with their kid or their spouse, and they come in and take it out on everybody in the office.
And it does happen. And I think that, the relationship itself, the type of business, the culture, there are all these different elements that can really affect the individual's belief that they can ask their leader for something that they need.
That they can influence them. I mean, you talk about culture. Some of these cultures that we work in are very top down, where, it's, you get your marching orders, you do what you're supposed to do, don't question it, and that's it. And there are some organizations that are very much that way. So when people see the organizational culture like that, they just assume that means they can't ask or influence or talk about stuff to their leader.
And what's interesting about that is that in that directive, that leader has given you a lot of the information you need to influence up. You know what's important to them. You know what's driving to them. You can target your conversation to what drives them. They've told you. They may not like the way that they've told you, but they have told you.
Yeah, you have a lot of information. And so, it comes around to how do you develop relationships with people. It's important to have a relationship with your leader or your follower. We always put such an emphasis on, having relationships with leaders, but the leaders got to develop relationships with followers if they want information, if they want, to understand what the difficulties are. I mean, a lot of leaders have also told me that they don't care. You can use asserting, bridging, attracting, persuading. They don't care. They just want to be told what's going on because they can intervene and help. That's their role. That's their job. They can make things smoother. They can get you connected with the right people. They can do stuff for people, but if they don't know what's going on, what are they supposed to do?
Right, and that's been my experience, is that lack of understanding that it's okay to tell me what you need. I can't, as a manager, as your boss, I'm assuming, unless you tell me otherwise, that you have everything you need.
Well, yeah.
I've given you the task at hand. Unless you tell me you need X, Y, and Z to complete the task at hand, I'm assuming you're going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, I've had that experience myself where, we needed different equipment or whatever, and I had no idea there was a problem. When I find out there's a problem, I'm like, okay, let's fix this. That's the way most leaders are, is they're willing to fix whatever the problem is, help support, pave the way, get support, whatever. So one of the things that's in all the people that you've talked to, Rhonda, tell me something. What do you think is the constant advice you give to people when they are challenged with influencing upwards?
9 times out of 10, it's be brief. My practice rounds with individuals are very often, they fall into their old habit of providing all that data, the minutia. Your leader doesn't need the minutia. They've given you that role as leader because they know you can manage the minutia. Let me know what you need to move the project forward, or to reach my 2020 goal, or reach, whatever it is to move this forward. If you're stuck, what can you do, and what do you need from me to move forward?
Well, and it's brief and come with solutions.
When I was in managing, that was one of the things that I always did with my supervisors. Is I always told them, if you have a problem, come to me with a solution. That's why I said, that you have to let people make mistakes, because they're not going to continue to come to you with solutions unless they feel that it's okay to make a mistake. And that happens very often, that fear. But I want to know what it is what you can do for me. Again, I've given you that role because I know you have the power to do it. How can you help me? How can you help me move forward?
Exactly. I mean, I think really thinking through what's going on in the organization, thinking through what the priorities are, thinking through what your leader or manager's priorities are, what matters to them, really customizing, tailoring everything you do to achieve those outcomes. That helps a lot.
And another interesting thing, and I found this happened twice just recently at an event we were running, where they prepared this wonderful conversation and they saved the juicy nugget for the end, that end game, when they could have started with it and probably had a 5-minute conversation to get the resources they needed instead of all this setup.
Yeah.
It's really very interesting because you know what drives your leader. You can't get stuck in your own processes and try to customize that speech or that request to what makes you tick. You have to understand what makes them tick, and you have to remove that. You have to remove those personal objections by practicing the conversation and understanding what makes sense. And it doesn't have to be a 25-minute conversation.
Right. Most of them end up being pretty quick. The other thing that I think about is how people are fearful or nervous, or there's a range of emotions or sensations people have when they need to influence their boss. And of course, it depends on the right relationship. If they don't have a close relationship, it makes it more challenging to influence them. So, bottom line is, what do you need to do to calm yourself down, ground yourself? We're back to that. Ground and center yourself. Take a deep breath. Oxygen is your friend, and relax.
Well, it's interesting. That really supports my other comment, is that they had to get out all these words so they could get into their rhythm of talking and breathing before they were able to express themselves with great comfort. It was really an amazing thing to see. It was 2 specific individuals, executive level, and they had to influence the C-suite. For one was a very major decision, another was just additional income to support a team on merging 2 teams to complete a project by 2015. And the vision was, the common ground and the vision were there, but she ended with it instead of starting with it. Mm. And the same with the other. He was looking to just for financing for a new adventure that would bring them great returns down the line. With this gentleman's, it had a 2030 outlook, and his finishing vision was for the 2030 outlook and how it would bring money to the bottom line. It's like, that's it right there. Start with that.
That's cool.
Yeah, it was.
So you said 2015. Did you mean 2025 or?
Yes, 2025. I'm sorry, I'm still not in 2020.
2015, and they were just.
I'm not getting used to this 2020. It's only been a month.
Yeah.
Not even yet.
Well, so there's a couple of things then that people need to think about when influencing upwardly. So one of them is what's your culture? Honor the culture. Don't, like some cultures is completely open door policy. You can go to any level, influence anywhere. But if your policy is you have to follow the ladder up, then don't go around your boss, because that'll definitely do some damage to the relationship. So follow whatever the culture says in terms of influencing in challenging situations. Build a relationship with your boss that's closer, that, part of it is, I always think about this. Ask your boss questions. Find out about their background, their experience. What are the biggest lessons they've learned in the corporation? Use your boss as a coach, a mentor, to help you understand how the organization works and what their history is. There's a lot to be said for understanding the history of how somebody gets to be your boss. So that's a way to build the relationship with your boss. And then be solid. Be grounded, center yourself, breathe, take deep breaths, relax down, and just get clear. What is it that you're asking for?
Yeah, it's interesting that you bring it out with the asking questions. It is really astounding, the individuals that don't have, they know what their boss is from the bio from the website, but they've never sat down and just had a conversation, whether it be past the interview. It's like you should know the people that you're working with, and I've never had a situation where it was a closed door situation where I wasn't able to converse with my boss and find out a little more about them.
Yeah, I mean, it's always interesting to find out who people are and how they got to where they are, and what you can learn from other people. I mean, that's huge. I mean, they're your boss for a reason.
Yes.
And, we have a lot of people who aren't very good leaders, and they make it hard to talk to them. But most people like talking about themselves.
In my experience.
I mean, they just do. A lot of people like telling their story, having somebody listen. You learn a lot about how to influence somebody by understanding who they are. And the same thing is true for your boss. I mean, we always tell people, use a lot of bridging to get to know somebody, understand what matters to them, what's important to them. And just because you get some kind of document that says, these are our objectives for the year and all this kind of stuff, that's not knowing somebody, because in a lot of cases, those have been handed down. So ask your boss, well, what do you think about these? How are we going to achieve them? How do you see us doing this? Ask the questions and then listen to the answers. I mean, really listen to the answers. Paraphrase. That, again, builds trust, builds understanding, builds the relationship.
Yeah, it's interesting because I mean, even with project management, in a way you do a lot of this before every project.
Yeah.
You should be doing it before every project.
Oh, absolutely.
So there isn't any reason why you wouldn't be doing it with your boss on any initiative, because then you have clarity. What if you miss something completely? What if your boss missed something completely? By having that candor, the ability to have that one-to-one conversation, it's going to remove a lot of those obstacles.
Yeah, and that's a critical piece. Really understanding what matters. What other thoughts do you have?
Well, I always find it interesting when the situation calls for asserting a more direct approach. And people are like, I can't talk that way to my boss. And it's like, no, it's not the way you're talking, it's what you're saying and how you're saying it. I always find it very interesting that, particularly with the practice, the result is usually, wow, I think I can do that.
You're the good old Z model.
Right? It's very powerful when it's really something that's driving you and you need it. And there are consequences and positive results that you can control. You can really present a very positive argument for something that you need.
Well, and being really clear on what you want is important. I had somebody yesterday wanting to influence the CFO, and she was saying that she wanted to have somebody to do some programming. And I said, no. What you want is you want the CFO to approve funding and assign somebody to be able to do the programming that you need. And so that was kind of an eye-opener for her, because she wasn't able just to be clear with what she wanted. It was all implied in what she was saying. It was all there, but it wasn't a clear, here's what I need from you.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting to see. And I think women can be guilty of that. We try to soften stuff so that we don't get labeled with the B word. I don't think that's ever stopped me, but.
Yeah, but there's being assertive and there's being aggressive, and we clarify that. It really is the way you frame what you're saying, but it goes back to, with influencing up, it always goes back to that directness and the brevity.
Well, and as we teach everybody with the push styles, they work a lot better when you're direct and you're concise.
Yeah.
I mean, it's true for both persuading and asserting.
Yeah.
Be direct, be concise, say what you want, come to the point, have solid reasons with the persuading, think through your incentives and pressures with the asserting, and you'll have the impact you need.
And stop and breathe, wait for the answer. It's very interesting how few people will stop when they've presented their idea.
You keep talking.
They keep, stop, maybe they're gonna say yes, heaven forbid, but just stop talking.
Yeah.
Let somebody else fill in the silence except yourself.
Yeah, silence is an excellent tool. State what you need, what you want, and be quiet. I mean, sometimes in asserting, all you have to do is say what you want, and the other person will go, okay. They might have resistance, and if they do, then you use the rest of the behaviors within the asserting model, the Z model, but sometimes you can just get exactly what you want just by saying, hey, I need this. The other person, oh, okay, cool, you got it.
Yeah. But you have the why, but you might not need to use it. Right?
Yeah.
That's the best part of practicing and being prepared for that conversation is you'll have the information to support it if you prepare properly.
Well, again, it really is all about the relationship, and the followers are just as responsible for that relationship as leaders. We always try to put the whole responsibility on the leader, but it's not. There's some pretty pitiful followers out there, I'll tell you that. They're passive aggressive, backstabbing. There's people that are terrible, terrible followers. They just are. So you as a follower are just as responsible for the quality of that relationship. The leader and the follower may have different tasks to do. The leader can set a tone, but the follower also follows with that tone and actually carries through and says, okay, this is what it is from my side. So each one, 50-50, every relationship in your life, I don't care who it is, 50-50 responsibility for the quality of that relationship. So if you don't like the relationship, what are you going to do differently?
Yeah,
And that's to the followers.
It was interesting. I was reading an article online just last week, and it was talking about the changing of the performance review, the annual performance review, because what the trend is going toward is more one-to-one meetings throughout the project, throughout whatever task, to make sure everybody's on the same page. And it makes so much sense. But again, the onus is on both the follower and the leader to be open with what is needed, what's expected, where we need to go, etc. And having that and maintaining that open conversation. It was really a great article to read, because you would hope that with all this information about emotional intelligence and how you need to connect and build relationships, that piece of managing and following was moving forward, and it was a great article.
Yeah, sounds good. Sounds good. Maybe we can put a link to it out so people can find that article. But I mean, it is interesting. My experiences with anonymous 360 tools is, people will write things that are insulting and offensive, and it just doesn't. I think it creates more defensiveness and confusion in people than it helps.
Yeah. And talk. I mean, there shouldn't be there. My philosophy with the performance review was always, I shouldn't be surprising you.
Right.
I should have brought up this negative or positive situation throughout whatever time frame, so that when we sat down, you should have known what I was going to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I should have known what you were going to say.
Yeah.
And that doesn't always happen. But again, it's a two-way responsibility. It's a relationship.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And, I think what I know from all the people that I interviewed, I said, what would be the impact of improved leader-follower relationships in your organization? It's like less stress, higher productivity, higher motivation, more satisfaction at work. I mean, it's all right there. We know it. We've known this forever. So influence away. That's what I say. Influence away, fix your relationships. Whether you're a leader or a follower. If you have a broken relationship, fix it. Do
Fix
it. Come to us. We'll help
We'll
you
help
fix it.
That's what we do.
And we do it really well. All right, well, I'm Sherri.
And I'm Rhonda.
And we'll
We'll
see
see you next time.